will never get tired of that intro.
I know. It's such a bop.
Truly. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I see a few people are watching live. Love to see it. So today we are talking about how to promote and market your book offline. We've been talking a lot about online because obviously that is a really great tool for us to use as authors to promote ourselves via social media, emails, events online, etc. But today we have a very special author guest who is going to talk to us about how she's been promoting her book outside of the internet and in the real world. Imagine that.
Wild.
Kyra, do you go outside?
I live in New York City, so yes and no. That's a
cold right now there to go outside.
Question.
Okay, so enough friendly banter. Let's bring her in. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys. I appreciate the invite here.
Of course. Would you like
Absolutely
to introduce yourself to our broader audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Taylor Kickbush. I'm the author of Endless in August. Kind of my part-time gig. I am a user experience engineer living in Washington, D.C. normally. I'm also a full-time traveler. So for the past year and a half, I've been full-time traveling throughout the United States, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today.
I'm sorry, but that's cool.
Yes, I'm very excited
so cool.
to talk about it.
Thanks.
You're living a lot of people's dreams. So that's a really great segue into our very first question, which is quite literally, tell us about what you're up to. What is Taylor doing these days?
I figured we'd get there, so I was going to hold off and let that sink in. So for the last year and a half, following my book release, I've been traveling the United States and the world full time. I'm allowed to work remotely right now due to COVID, so I'm living outside of Washington, D.C. I got rid of my apartment, before I left, and then I moved all my stuff to my brother's, took a stack of my books and shoved everything in my car and hit the road. So I've visited the last 24 states in the last year, and I've been to, I think, 7 countries now. So just really been traveling a lot and kind of promoting that novel.
That sounds so fun.
Thanks.
That sounds so fun. And I'm sure, there's a lot of probably glamorous moments and not so glamorous moments Kyra asked me the question the other day. She's like, where do you shower?
It depends. If you're actually asking, it depends. I have showered at gas stations, not luxurious. I have also bathed in creeks, rivers. I do get Airbnbs mostly, so I wouldn't say it's always living in my car kind of thing. But I loved being able to just drive as long as I wanted to without having to worry about if I have a place to stay, if I can afford it, which I did it mostly to step outside my comfort zone. The whole purpose was to be, to live a life that I hadn't lived before. So I wanted to get that, sleeping in the car, bathing in rivers, just why not? We're only here for a short time. So
these are very real and practical questions to ask yourself if you've ever thought about van life, for example. So question is, you said you brought a stack of books with you. What do you do with your books when you travel?
So the beautiful thing about traveling, especially in the United States, is that, a lot of us speak the same language, not everybody, but talking to people is the best way you can promote your book. I'm sure a lot of people have learned, reaching out to people one-on-one is a great way to, message and talk about your book through the internet. But doing the same thing in real life and implementing those skills in real life is the best way I found to market my book. I was able to give or donate my novel to a lot of people on the road. I also sold it on the road as well to Airbnb hosts or coffee shop owners or bookstores along the way. And so being able to just take my books and disperse them throughout the US in person and get them signed and things, it was a beautiful thing. So yeah, just starting conversations about it.
So what is kind of I have a follow-up question as well.
No, you go first, Mackenzie.
Okay. What is kind of your strategy when you think about, okay, I'm going to a new place? Is it kind of these conversations just happen as you go places? I can imagine it would be natural for Airbnb and for coffee shops, but do you plan to go to specific places on purpose to have these conversations?
No, so that's the beautiful thing too, is that it's such a natural thing to ask somebody, what do you do, right? That's the first thing everybody, besides your name, you know, a lot of people are like, okay, where do you live? What do you do? You know, what are you about? Those are like the top questions I get all the time, you know, not even forcing it. And so just when you meet somebody, you know, you bring up, oh, you know, I'm an author. And then the follow-up question is, oh, what's your book about? That's so cool. And so that's usually how it happens. And it's not planned. Like I didn't go to a bookshop and was like, hey, like, you know, will you take my book? I'm an author, right? It was more of like I was looking for a book to read, and then we start talking about books you like, and then I mention I'm an author, and then it just goes from there. So it's nothing forced at all. I don't love forcing conversations at all anyway. I'm not a great like salesperson, but I'm a great marketer, and I think I'm a great communicator too. So just naturally conversing with people is the most important thing.
What you just said actually like recontextualizes my question a bit, because I really would love for you to explain like how like the difference between a salesperson and a marketer in the way that you talk about your book.
Sure. So when I think of salesperson, I really think of something that's more forced. I mean, marketing can be forced too and planned, but it's a little bit more effective. So again, when I think salesperson, I think of something that's forced. But when I think of a marketer, it's someone who's planning things strategically, who's thinking about the impacts of what they're saying or what they're trying to give away or sell. So it's not just selling something; it's really implementing and strategically planning what you're selling, if that makes sense. There's definitely a big difference, and there's a lot of branding involved in marketing, whereas selling is, you know, you don't necessarily always have passion for something you might be selling, but you usually always have something passion for what you're marketing.
Mm-hmm. And just super quickly, like, and even in your answer, it seems like in marketing, there's like a relational nuance, whereas in sales, it's like, you're going to like this product because I told you that you will. The
Yeah,
end. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Again, that's not a one size fits all answer, but you know,
Right.
so many different things that being marketed and sold and whatever else today, especially in our consumer lifestyles. But I definitely think there's a big difference in the passion of the product, and no matter what that product is, and especially your personal passion for it too.
You've illustrated a point really well that like books are bought. They're not books are sold, they're not bought. Excuse me. Woo, I had to make sure I got that right. They are
Yeah.
sold to people. They're not necessarily just bought on a whim. And if they are, it's not necessarily something that happens like just out of nowhere. Like I came across this book, I saw it from across the crowded room, and
Yeah.
our eyes met, and I knew it was the one for me.
Right.
It's you probably saw that book cover at least 17 times on Bookstagram before you wandered over to it and picked it up. So actually, you know what? I'm going to ask a different question. What is your author marketing strategy in general?
In general, I would say that I am more of the one-on-one communicative person. I think, you know, even on our conversations, I think anyone can agree with that. When I was marketing my book initially before it came out, I was more of the person who would reach out one by one to people, rather than say, you know, here's the link to my book. Please, you know, please buy it. Whoever's listening, whoever's still interested in it, etc. I was more of reaching out to Joe Schmo and saying, hey, like, I think you'd really like this book because your father went through a hard time last year, and I really think some of my words resonated with you, right? So like finding a connection in someone and like being genuine with them about why they think that they would like your book. That's kind of how I found most of my success, and also not being fake. Like I think again, salesperson versus marketer. I think for me it was a book that I wasn't writing because I wanted money. I was doing it because I had a story to tell, and I was very passionate about the story, and I really wanted to get that story in writing and into the hands of people who would also love it. So I think the intention behind my book itself was making sure it found its way to people in the most natural form, in the sense of just, you know, arriving in their lives, whether it be universal or, you know, whatever impact, horoscopes, whatever you guys are into. But it wasn't anything forced. And that's really my strategy, is just kind of going with the flow and, you know, making sure that the right people get my book, whoever picks it up and needs it.
I just gotta say, I love how you put that. Picks it up and eats it. That's like beautiful, because we indulge in story. So
Right.
just want to say it really fast.
Appreciate that.
So in line with that, so I kind of like your strategy as being very go with the flow, because I feel like for me, my strategy is most of the time go, 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 go. And it gets exhausting. So sometimes it's interesting to play with different strategies, which is why we have these conversations with all these different authors to see all the different ways in which they're talking about their book. So as you kind of continue and you meet all these people and you kind of gather this audience and you get feedback about the book, like how do you keep your audience engaged in your book journey? Follow-up question to that, do you plan on writing more books?
Ooh, both good questions. Let's start with the first one. So keeping your audience engaged. Wow. So this is definitely something I can imagine a lot of people struggle with. For me, I've always found that not solely talking about your book all the time is probably the best way to keep your audience engaged. The reason being is because as much as you would love to just always talk about your novel, doing it in different ways by dispersing yourself, like your own story, like talking about maybe a great dinner you had while writing the book, or talking about, you know, your favorite passions and how that kind of got intertwined with the book, but not even relating it in the book, just talking about something else to give people's minds a rest, and then looping it back in maybe in a follow-up post, right? Or a follow-up conversation with somebody. Just consistently keeping people on their toes. It's really hard, especially in social media these days, to make anything feel fresh or new, or, you know, something that someone hasn't seen before. So like kind of stepping away from the day-to-day droning of here's my book, this is what it's about, to like talking about, hey, this is who I am as an author, and this is, you know, a story I really care about, and this is why, and like just picking up different pieces of the puzzle and putting them together in one big whole story, rather than shoving the story in its entirety every day. That's how I keep people engaged. Is just on my journey, talking to different people and maybe telling the story of what someone else thought about it, or really like talking about myself. People are so interested in people, and so like talking about my experiences, book related or not, people have found a lot of inspiration in that, and like being able to step outside of their comfort zone. So even talking about emotions while writing your book, about the headbangs, the starved meals, the missed happy hours, etc. Those are all shared feelings that we can all relate to, the burnout, etc., the cries, the tears. I had a lot of tears. So just finding something to relate to.
I think that's really good advice, because it's another thing that we tell authors when they get frustrated, especially during like fundraising or crowdfunding for their books, right? They're like, all they do is they post about buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And then they wonder why people aren't engaged.
Yeah.
Because it was just like you're saying earlier, people don't want to be sold to, at least they don't want to be very much in your face knowing they're being sold to.
Yeah.
It's also kind of like if you guys are on TikTok and you're scrolling through and you notice something is very obviously an ad, you're like, I'm going to skip that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're watching things on Hulu, you pay for that premium so that you don't have to watch ads. Like, people don't love that. They love you being your authentic self.
Yeah. I will say the best post I had, or engagement I had on a post, was when I did a video during my campaign. I did a buy one, give one campaign, where they would be able to buy one and tell me where they wanted the book donated, a second book donated, anywhere in the world. They could pick a person, a library, whatever they wanted, and I would do it. And then other people made me choose. So I give them to little libraries around the district area, DC area. And I did a video about it, and I took a video of myself dropping the books off and like having them signed, and I had them like all sanitized and wrapped in plastic. So it was during COVID a year ago, like deep into COVID. And people really loved that. They loved seeing the journey, like the story of the book arriving at its destination. So that was something. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like people love people. They like to see that, oh, this book is getting donated to somebody. Like that's so cool, right? And it's sanitized and someone's going to get it for free and be able to pass it on. Like people love stories within stories. And like that's the one thing, if anyone can take away anything, it's people love people. And that's the best way to sell your book is through people, for me.
There are so many things that you just said that I particularly loved. People love stories within stories, and people love people.
Yeah.
So as a quick follow-up question to what you just said, so naturally you've shared that your primary author marketing strategy is more offline, more on the one-on-one, more about individual relational engagement. But how do you then strike the balance of the occasional engagement on social media or like a newsletter? Like, is there, like, how much do you then incorporate a little bit of an online element too?
Right. That's a great question. So I do have a blog. I wouldn't say I'm on social media all the time, but I do have a pretty big following on Facebook, on Instagram, just based upon, of course, the people I've met on my travels too. I've picked up quite a good following. So I keep those people engaged on my travels, on my book. I have a hashtag that I use, which is hashtag taking on the world, tribute to my name, that anyone can find me anywhere in the world. That's the only one. Like it. And as well as that, it links to my blog. So my blog is takingontheworld.com, and I have a book page on there where anyone can contact me for book signings, contact me for book sales. If they would like to put their book in a store, I have a website link for that. If they want to request author chats, I have that information on there. So I have a website. I have a good social media following where I do occasionally post about my book and my stories. On Facebook and Instagram, as well as do like occasional, like, hey, it's Small Business Saturday. Would you like to support me as a small business, which, my business being writing books, something like that. Like I try to make it, what's the word I'm looking for? Trendy, I guess. And something that's on topic and not just random. I think about everything before I post it.
So on topic, not random. How do you bring up your book in casual conversations without just being like, wait for lull in conversation? By the way, I wrote a book.
Yeah. So I think this is a good one for an example that happened on a plane recently when I was traveling between Florida and Washington, D.C. I was sitting next to a gentleman who was older. I don't want to guess because I don't know for sure, but he was older, retirement age. And he was a retired U.S. National Park Forest officer, which really appeared and appealed to me because I love traveling. I love national parks. So we started talking about that. And I let him talk about himself because people know themselves best and they love to talk about themselves. So I didn't ask any questions. I just let him, say what he needed to say about life and about the national parks and his history. And he started off shy and he started getting more comfortable with me and sharing more stories. And so finally, after I let him talk about himself, he asked about me. And he let me talk. And that's when I was like, I'm traveling to DC. I live here. This is what I do for work. And, I wrote a book last year, so I've been traveling a lot for it. And immediately it was just such a natural thing. And he's actually writing a book too. And so I gave him some pointers, right? So like, it was such a natural thing, and people love to hear about you too, not just themselves. They love to talk about you too. And so sharing that excitement just naturally and just talking about it and having it come up in conversation after maybe 20 minutes, it was totally fine. We had a whole plane ride to talk about me and books and him writing and his writing journey, etc. So I think just it doesn't have to be the first thing that you tell somebody about you. It could come later. And sometimes that even appeals better because, you're not like bragging about it, right? It is a huge honor. And like, sometimes if you like say all the good things about you right off the bat, people are like, oh, this girl's done way too much. You think she's so cool, right? So just kind of like giving people a little bit of tidbit about yourself. So they're curious, they're, in tune, they're engaged. Just little by little is kind of how I try to play it. I wouldn't say I'm introverted or reserved, but I try to again, strategically, like talk to people and let them, you know, ask questions about me before I give them the answers.
So, as a quick follow-up question to that, a huge, like, frankly, a thread throughout what you've been saying thus far is that you actually have conversations with people. Like, there's like a intentional, individual, relational, like, moments where the conversation happens. So, I guess my question is a little bit like circumstantial because you and I published in the same cohort, which is super awesome. And have you noticed amidst the pandemic, like navigating in-person conversations again? Like, have you seen that play a role in your ability to have these dialogues?
That's a great question. So when we published in 2020, we weren't really going anywhere, right, or doing anything. I was at home, right? So that kind of played a big part of it, and that's why I did the buy one donate ones, because I knew I could donate it later when I got it. So that was kind of like my introduction to reaching out to people and all that good stuff. And when things started opening up, I started going to stores in person and talking about my book to them and seeing if they wanted to carry my book. And so I've done really good sales that way in person, and little bookstores here and there, or little shops, hometown stores, whatever. But to answer your question shortly, yes, I have seen a difference between like 2020, where I wasn't able to really get out there and talk to people, to now where I'm just naturally traveling for my own benefit more than anything. And at the same time, I'm able to like share my book with others, like in person that way too. So it's kind of like a two bird, one stone kind of thing. But I have definitely seen like people are coming out of their shells and are wanting to talk about themselves and cool things that they did during COVID and all that good stuff. So people are excited to talk, trust me.
Okay, I have one last baby follow-up question to that, I promise. Okay, so would you say generally, when in doubt, go in person? Like if it's an option, go? Unless like health concerns, there's that. But...
Unless there's health concerns. Well, I would say that it depends on the person, right? Like not everybody is an introvert or an extrovert. So like it really depends on what your preference is. Everybody's different. Everybody's book's different. Everybody's story is different. So for me, like being the person that I am, loving to travel and loving people and being able to naturally communicate with them easily and bring up conversation, it was great for me. But that doesn't mean it's great for everybody. I would say that just as well, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, all the other ones, I think those are just as effective. Probably, I mean, they could even be more effective. I can't really say because I do both. You can implement the same topics and strategies that I'm talking about in person, offline too. So I will say that for me, it's more fulfilling to like give that person that book in person and see the reaction of like, wow, you're the author, you're giving it to me. I love that. And that's the satisfaction and gratitude that I want when I give my book away or sell it online. Like, even if I sell it online, I would much prefer to have it signed with a little note, etc. I have like an Etsy page for it for that reason. So for me, it gives me that satisfaction of like being able to have that personal connection with somebody. But anyone would be okay online too.
All right. Well, that brings us to the final question that we have for you, but we also want to make sure that people know that they can ask you questions in the chat. So feel free to drop a question in the chat if you have a question for Taylor. Our last question for you, Taylor, is what's been your favorite moment of your book journey so far?
Oh, man. Let me think. I think that my favorite moment, it was when I was in Washington State, and I was at a bed and breakfast I'd booked the night before. And I was sitting at a table of some incredible women. It was all women. There was 4 of us who had stayed overnight, and we were having breakfast the next morning together. And the leader the leader, the owner of the bed and breakfast was also there. She was cooking in the kitchen and all that good stuff. And she was going around the table asking each and every one of us, what are we doing? Why are we here? What's our purpose in life? She was getting all, Buddha in us. And one of the things I said was that I wrote a book, and she was just so intrigued with it. She said how young I am and how exciting it is. And no matter what age you are, that's such a great accomplishment. And she herself she was upper 80s, and she had a whole life of travel and exciting things. And here she was looking at me thinking I was like the best thing since sliced bread. And it made me feel so empowered and so happy and so proud of myself. For a while after I wrote my book, I didn't know what to do with myself. I felt like I already did it and I didn't know what to do. And she made me feel renewed. And I gave her and every other woman at the table a free copy of my book. I signed it, and just hearing their expressions or seeing their expressions and hearing their stories about after reading my book and what their thoughts were was just something I'll take away forever. It's just been such a cool experience to feel that empowerment from other women and other men too occasionally. So that's kind of my experience with my favorite moment.
That's such a nice story. I love those moments too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we do have one follow-up question in the chat here. Surprise, it's from me. So are you writing a second book?
Oh, I don't want to give away any surprises, but I don't know. So that's a great question. I wrote my book with the intention that if I wanted to make either a prequel or sequel, I would be able to. I also wrote my book if I wanted to stop, it would be an okay ending. So I gave myself a little bit of wiggle room there. I intended for it to have a prequel and a sequel. Sequel first, then prequel, like The Hobbit. That was kind of my intention when writing it. I love The Hobbit, by the way. But so we'll see. I have the idea in my head. I haven't started writing. I actually, to be honest, that man I met in the plane, the U.S. National Park Forest officer, I offered to edit his book for him and beta read his book for him. So I'm busy with that at the moment. So that was it was a really nice thing. So I'm busy doing that, but we'll see. Maybe it'll inspire me to write another one.
Amazing.
That's so wholesome.
Thank you. Any other questions? This has been fun.
This has been fun. Well, so I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat here. We do have a few people joining from various places. One from DC, one from the back of a horse. So we are really out here, truly. Kyra, do you have any remaining questions for Taylor here?
I do have one. I'm just super, super curious about this. So, particularly as you're traveling, and you mentioned that you have a blog. So, how do you carve out time to do writing rituals and things like that? And what do you do to get in the zone for writing? I'm just super curious.
Yeah, no worries. That's a great question. I get questions like that all the time while I'm traveling. So I guess the biggest thing for me is that I work full time. So I work between 40, 60, or 80 hours a week, depending on the week. So already having that ritual of waking up, no matter what time zone I'm in, at 8 a.m. DC time, Eastern time. So if I'm in California, that's 5 a.m. that time. So having that ritual of waking up, working my 8 or 9 or 10 hours, hitting the road and driving somewhere new, exploring a park or two, and then sitting down and just reliving my day, but also writing about my day. I have a journal that I've been keeping. I collect receipts and feathers and whatever else while I'm on the road, just to have kind of a little scrapbook journal thing going on. But also if it's a priority, you're going to make time for it. So if it's important to you, you're going to make time for it. And writing for me is important. Yeah. Writing for me is important. It can be daunting, and it can feel like a chore sometimes. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I take a break for months and I don't write a thing, and that kind of rejuvenates me. So I try to think of it as writing is not a chore. It is not something that should be forced necessarily. It's something that if you love it and adore it and have a higher purpose for your writing, it'll come to you, and you will make time for it when you are ready, when your brain is ready. And yeah, I mean, for me, it just came so naturally that like I knew I wanted to write a book, and that I would like schedule it into my calendar every day because it was something I wanted to do. But yeah, now that I'm not writing a book, it's still something I do occasionally, and I make time for it. I just kind of schedule it in my calendar.
That was already such a great nugget of wisdom. I do still want to ask, because I ask everyone, do you have any parting words that you would like to share with the audience as we close out for today?
Man, parting words. I'll say that, things are hard. Life is hard, and it's not a journey that's easy for anybody. And I know that's cliche, but, writing a book isn't easy, and neither is riding a horse. Whoever's riding a horse right now. And neither is, waking up sometimes in the morning, or taking a shower every day or every other day, or however often you're supposed to. Life is hard, and it's not the same for everybody. And so giving yourself the extra grace and extra care to like take care of yourself first, and then make time for your priorities, your other priorities other than yourself, is the most important thing you can do. Just give yourself grace and love and self-acceptance, and just make sure you are your number one priority, and everything else will follow and come to you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you for chatting with us today.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciated the time, and I hope I gave some good wisdom to others.
I can confirm you did.
Thanks, Taylor. All right, everybody, that was today's coffee chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you have any follow-up questions, you can connect with the author in other places. She mentioned she has a website. She mentioned she has hashtags. You can find her all the places, Taylor Kickbush. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach out to us or any of the other author coaches at the links below. And there you go. That's it for today. Kyra, do we have any more coffee chats before the holidays?
Yes, we do. We have one more coffee chat in the year 2021. Man, this year was wow. The final coffee chat of this year will be next week, and we will be talking to New Degree Press authors who have both been on podcasts and started their own podcasts, and how navigating both of those spaces has shaped their book journeys at large. Wow.
We're going to be going out with a bang, folks. Very excited for this next one. But that is all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.